Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Wise Decision Maker Show, where we help you make the wisest, most profitable decisions. My name is Dr. Gleb Tsipursky. I'm the CEO of Disaster Avoidance Experts, the future of work consultancy that sponsors the Wise Decision Maker Show. Today with me is Kayla Lebovits, the CEO and founder of Bundled Benefits. We'll talk about bundled benefits later, but first, I want to ask you, Kayla, you've worked with a number of clients around remote work, around supporting well-being. Tell me what you're seeing from your clients regarding the future of remote work. Where is that going from your perspective?
Yes, we're seeing a lot of changes that companies are starting to work on now to fuel like their 5-year workplace reimagined plans.
Hmm.
And I think it kind of boils down to a few different things. I think there's obviously changes in how people are working. There's no more like the 9 to 5 that everyone works. You're finding people are working the schedules that work for them as long as they can be in the meetings they need to be in and get their work done, be productive. It's based less on FaceTime and more on, are you getting the work done? Are you collaborating with
Mhm.
your peers? Are you being involved in what you need to be involved in? So definitely seeing the changes in how people are working and it being more acceptable to go pick up your kids in the middle of the day or take
Mhm.
care of something personal or well-being during the day. Again, it's more results driven. Are you able to be productive and perform? Then people are caring less about, being sitting in your desk at home in 9 to 5. So that's the first thing that our clients are seeing, and they're adjusting and understanding that employees do need flexibility in order to be happier at work. And if they're happier, they're more likely to perform better.
Mhm.
So that's the first change we're seeing is more acceptance around it's okay to work different hours. The second is we're hearing a lot of them talking about how the CHRO at companies is becoming more and more vital to the success of a company.
Mhm.
We speak to clients all the time and they say it's crucial for CHROs to work with the C-suite to drive the change needed at the company.
Yeah.
If CHROs aren't part of the executive suite, if they're not being included in future strategies of the company, that's a bad sign because, again, the future of work is so much about the future of people. And you need to have those CHROs who have the experience, who have the skill set to think about the people part of the equation. And there's one of our clients had a great line where they said, if a CHRO isn't being considered as a potential successor to the CEO, that's a problem. And that really
Yeah.
resonated with me because CHROs, because of the pandemic, because of the future of work, they really rise to the top. And their skill sets, their strategies, their mindset, and their ideas
Mhm.
matter. They always mattered, but now they matter even more.
Yeah.
So I think you're seeing a lot of changes about how the HR teams are thought of at companies. And the last thing I'll just say is I think that as people think about the future of work and about well-being and professional development and all the things that help
Mhm.
employees perform, feel connected, and be productive, I think you're seeing a lot of clients as they think about the benefits that provide to come to their employees. How can they provide more curated choice? There's not a one size fits all.
Mhm.
You can't just give everyone like a mental therapy app or a meditation app and say you
Mhm.
solve the well-being burnout problem at your company. You need to give lots of solutions because there's so many generations in the workforce, and how can you cater to those different generations? The answer is
Mhm.
giving them choice, giving them personalized options. I'm not saying you have to give them a buffet of options, but more than just one solution for their well-being, for their professional development, because everyone, burns out and addresses their burnout differently. Everyone professionally develops differently. So I think having curated choice in ways you can support your employees is extremely important.
Let's circle back to the second point you made about the CHRO. Now, I helped 21 companies transition to figuring out the permanent future work arrangements. And what I'm inevitably seeing when I'm going into a company and helping them out is that the CHRO tends to be at the forefront of thinking about the future of work. And they tend to be much more flexible and much more visionary about adopting remote work. And they see, okay, this is really what the talent needs. But when I look at other stakeholders, often other stakeholders in the C-suite tend to be somewhat more conservative, more traditionalist, and they are more reluctant to follow where the CHRO is leading. And that's not a typical dynamic. When you think about the dynamic, in the before times prior to the pandemic, the CHRO was not typically in the visionary position. And now the CHRO is in the visionary position, trying to push the whole organization forward, because right now the key differentiator is becoming not simply about the product or the ideas, but about the talent, the people. And specifically, you can't manage talent in the same way that you did before, because if you try to use the same old techniques, given the situation with the pandemic, you're really going to hurt yourself a lot in terms of retention, well-being, productivity, performance, and so on, recruitment, of course. And so what are you seeing around CHROs as visionaries? It sounds like that's something that you're seeing a little bit as well from your perspective. Tell me a little bit more about that.
I think it depends. Right now, we're seeing definitely it's different depending on the industry. We're seeing certain verticals that seem to be a little bit more progressive in thinking about CHROs as visionaries that need to be part of the future strategy. So in clients that are more like the biotech or high tech growth space, like they're ahead. They understand this. They witnessed the need for it during the pandemic. They're seeing it in remote work, how important talent is and retaining talent. It's more expensive to get new talent than retain your current talent. So
Sure.
we're almost seeing this bifurcation between industries that are more progressive and industries that might be a bit behind but are trying to catch up. So industries like manufacturing or even business services, they're slower to adapt to the new remote work. That's not to say that they can't get there. But I think they're just a little bit more, they're just slower to get there in terms of understanding how important HR is. I think a lot of people think the word HR should be like abolished because people have such backwards views and like such traditional views of what HR is. And that's why you've seen terms like the people team or the employee engagement team or employee experience. And I think that's part of an evolution of not thinking of HR as just like compliance and the people that fire people and they deal with all the administrative stuff. No, HR is dealing with all the people things. And there's the people aspect of companies is so multifaceted and so complicated. So I think just seeing those titles is kind of a way to see that HR is moving to the forefront. But again, I think depending on the industry, it will be a little slower for some. Like you said, there are some executives that are just a little bit caught in the past of what HR means. And then you have the total opposite side where they realize that without their CHRO, they will lose to their competitors. They need that CHRO's like mind and experience and people skills to help move the company forward.
Yeah, it's interesting that you talk about industries. I do see some within industries, but I also see a lot of difference within each individual industry. There are some companies, what I'm seeing is that there are many, many startups, more and more startups that are adopting more forward-looking progressive positions. And when I support startups making this transition, like a late-stage startup or something like that, they tell me that talent, they really realize the importance of talent to them. And because talent is so important, they don't have their systems and processes yet set up in such a way that, they can slot in somebody who's less talented and get the good outcomes. Whereas larger companies are in a situation where they have systems and processes and talent is somewhat less important to them. Yeah. And so what I'm seeing is a little bit of a bifurcation by size. Where younger companies tend to be more talent driven, and they tend to focus more on this CHRO's visionary, adapting to the future of work, remote work. And larger companies tend to be somewhat less visionary. And again, not all large companies, but many. I mean, for example, 3M is a very large and traditional company, which has a very progressive orientation toward the future of work, and some other companies like that.
Yeah, Amazon. I would agree with that because I think with size, like at smaller companies, you're not just a number versus at bigger companies. Again, not all of them, but at a lot of them, you're just a number. And I think when you cross that threshold of being just a number is when you have to put even more emphasis on retaining your people and not thinking of them as just a number. So that's probably why I would think smaller companies realize how important talent is. And like you said, they don't have the systems to easily replace people or the budget to replace people so easily. So I would agree with that as well.
Now, I want to go back to your third point about well-being. So let's talk a little bit more about that, supporting the well-being of remote workers. Now, there's a lot of discussions about burnout, hybrid work, remote work, what's happening. A lot of leaders have the misconception that remote workers are more likely to burn out than in-office workers. But that's not all what the studies show. The study research pretty clearly shows that in-office workers doing the same tasks are more likely to burn out compared to workers who work some or full-time remotely. Do you know anything about why leaders have these misconceptions in their heads?
I think that my like initial reaction is I think that people who work remote are in some ways expected to be on all the time. So when you're in office, you technically you leave and people think like you stop working, but that's not true anymore. I think that people are working when they get home, they're not turning off. But I think when you're working remotely, you're almost expected to be on all the time, or there's an assumption that, oh, if you're going to do something personal during the day, you're going to be on later. So they think that because of that, people are burning out quicker at home because they're expected to be on. But people in the office, I just think, have different stressors, right? There's a stressor of FaceTime, there's a stressor of commuting and not having as much time to do other things in your life. There's stressors of, wait, I'm going home and my remote colleague is still on. Should I be on? So I think not one is more burnt out than the other. I just think different aspects of work are burning them out. And I think, unfortunately, you're going to see this almost jealousy of how people are working. Those who work hybrid or in office are jealous of remote, and those that are remote are, there's like jealousy, for lack of a better word, because there's pros and cons of both. But I think generally the burnout, there's burnout in both. It's just different. But I think for some reason, people are focusing a bit more on the remote because it's what everyone's focused on in the media and the trends and everything, remote work, hybrid work. But like, they're almost forgetting like in office is stressful too. Like we all used to work in office, or a lot of us did. And there's just different stressors that lead to burnout. So.
Yeah, there's definitely, I mean, when you look at surveys and when you look at research, peer-reviewed research of all sorts, you can pretty clearly see that people doing the same job, same role, are more burned out when they go to the office because of the commute, because of FaceTime, like you said. So yes, there's definitely clearly more burnout. I think it is a misconception on the part of leaders that remote workers are more burned out. And the remote workers don't have to suffer for the 2 hours of the commute.
Exactly.
That's definitely good. They don't have to suffer through, putting on fancy clothes and, having a sad desk lunch and so on, being on all the time.
And especially if anything, in office employees, like if anything, you might be less productive because you're like seeing other colleagues and talking, and you almost have to make up for the work later on. So there's pros and cons of both.
No, there's no question that remote workers are more productive on average. So there's, I think, ranging, depending on the industry, it's 5 to 15%. People are more productive doing remote work because they don't have to do the commute. So you're not wasting a lot of time. People are willing to do work some time on that, and they're less distracted. They have to much more focused work.
Exactly.
Now, despite the fact that remote workers are less burned out, have less problems, it's still important to support their well-being. So tell me a little bit about how you're finding that your clients are intervening to support the well-being of remote workers.
Definitely. So they're doing a lot of listening. So they're not just doing like an employee survey once a year. A lot of them have like focus groups that meet quarterly. They're talking to their different ERGs. They're trying to get a more diverse perspective on well-being at their company and what people need. And what they're finding, again, like more generally, is that there's no like cookie cutter, one size fits all approach. They have very different generations in the workforce who have very different needs. And so they're realizing that just offering like a gym membership or a meditation class or whatever it is, like that's not going to cut it. They have to offer opportunities and benefits that actually promote a range of total well-being. And they can't just implement something and then not look back. They have to constantly evaluate, are people using it? Is it impacting them the way we want? I think when you see companies just implement and then walk away is when you see things not really taken up as much. It's the clients that are really helping to promote it, understanding how employees are using it. Are they benefiting from it? Those employers that are more involved continually through the process are the ones that we're seeing well-being offerings more successful. And again, they don't have to be the same thing every year. They need to be updated and changed and adjusted. And I think just doing one employee survey or employee engagement survey a year is not enough. We're seeing a lot more like quarterly or even monthly. How are you feeling? How are you doing? What could help you perform better? What could help you feel like more well at work? And not just about the individual. What about your team? How's your team doing? How are they working together? Do you see other people burnt out? Is everyone pitching in? So there's a lot of focus on not just individual well-being, but also team well-being. And that team well-being has been a trend that we've seen at least in the last 6 months, where there's just as much a focus on team wellness as there is on individual wellness.
Now, how do CHROs and others who actually care about employee well-being make the business case for it? So how do they come to the rest of the C-suite? How do they make the claim that, hey, this is actually important for us to care about?
It's really hard, honestly. I don't think there's one right answer. I think we focus a lot on like retention and development. Like, is this benefit? We ask questions and surveys to then give back to employers. Like, how did this wellness experience or offering actually impact you? Like, what did it help reduce anxiety? Did it help reduce stress? Did this well-being, professional development is also considered well-being. Did this professional development offering, did it help you perform better at work? Did it help you feel better about the work you're doing? So I think it's really hard to measure ROI with things that seem a little bit more fluffy, but I think it's really asking deep questions about value and impact. And is this something that employees talk about when they talk about working at your company? Like, oh my gosh, my company offers this amazing well-being or professional development offering that's actually like, it's something I actually use like a few times a month or whatever it is. So I think the ROI is definitely difficult to prove like an actual hard number. But I think if you look at, are your employees talking about it? Are they expressing that they feel less burnout, less anxious, less stressed? Are they feeling they're developing professionally? If those offerings that you're offering and those benefits that you're offering are helping to contribute to that, I think that's like the best you're going to get, because it's very hard to measure like getting a number for that ROI.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Now, tell us, the audience, a little bit about the nature of your expertise. What does Bundle Benefits do, and how do you support employee well-being?
Sure. So Bundle is a employee well-being and professional development solution that's completely virtual, can be accessed anywhere by any employee, no matter where, how they work. We basically offer a very simple and customized solution for organizations to invest in their employees' overall well-being, whether that's, again, like wellness, professional development, even family support. And we're all about helping to increase employee productivity and development. So how we do this is we offer thousands of one-on-one and team sessions where you learn from experts on a live interactive video call. And you're basically, learning, practicing, getting real-time feedback. So nothing is pre-recorded, nothing's on demand. It's all live and interactive with experts. And our session topics span a lot of different categories.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So how do you find that companies use your app to actually support their employees? Tell me about a use case.
So they're using it, I would say, in two different ways. So some companies who may not have as big of a suite of benefits outside of health insurance are using us to fill a lot of different gaps. They're using us to fill overall well-being for individuals and teams, professional development, because on-the-job learning is not there as much as it used to because of remote and hybrid work, and then family support to support working caregivers. So they're using us to fill a lot of different gaps that they're experiencing. And then some clients are coming to us and saying, I have a well-being issue. Like, my employees they're like about to quit, they're burnt out, they're stressed, they're anxious. We need a solution that gives them choice. Like us having yoga once a month or us giving them, calmer headspace, like it's not cutting it. We're not seeing the usage we want. So how can we provide something that allows them more personalized options? So that's where we're seeing some that are coming for like a full suite of, I have all these issues, can you help me fill the gaps there? Or some that have a very particular issue and they just want their employees to use us for a certain purpose. So we're seeing those two different types of clients right now.
Now, when you're thinking about how you support remote workers, how is the difference in how you support remote workers versus those who are hybrid, coming in occasionally, those who are full-time in the office? What do you find in terms of the actual workers, the employees that you support?
Yeah, it's interesting. We see employees that are remote versus like hybrid in office taking different sessions depending on where they are. So we see a lot of professional development done by remote workers, because when you're in the office, you might be in open workspace and you might not feel comfortable talking to someone about like how you want to communicate better or how you want to learn to lead better. So we see a lot of the professional development sessions being taken remotely because there's just this level of comfort. Unless you have an office or just a private space, that's when we tend to see those sessions taken more remotely. In terms of well-being, it's mixed. We see it used by all different types. But I'd say having the privacy is definitely a big factor. Companies that are more in office are doing more more team sessions. So they're doing well-being and professional development as a team together, versus you're seeing more of the remote employees probably do more one-on-one sessions, again, because of that privacy reason. So it's really the split between doing it with your team and doing it individually, and based on like the level of privacy that you want during the session.
Excellent. Yeah. Now, is there anything else that I haven't asked that you would like to share with our audience about well-being in the future of work, about bundle benefits, that before we close off?
Yeah, no, I just say that I think we're in a really interesting time. I think now that we're moving post-pandemic, there's so much opportunity. I think the pandemic was a catalyst for a lot of things that would have probably happened a lot slower than they did. So I think the next like 5 to 10 years are very exciting. I think that there's going to be lots of interesting, not only companies offering different offerings, but also clients doing really interesting things like bringing the CHRO to the C-suite or providing more flexibility. But I think that we still have a lot to learn. I think a lot of it's not determined. So I think it's a really exciting time, and there's a ton of opportunities for employers to work with employees to help them be more productive and well at work. So I think it's a very exciting time right now.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for sharing this with our audience, Kayla.
Yes, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. And thank you to the audience for checking us out. We always appreciate you listening and watching the Wise Decision Maker Show. Please make sure you subscribe to it wherever you check this out, and leave a review. We'd love to hear what you think. It helps us make the show better, and it helps other people discover the show. And please recommend us to your family and friends as well. I look forward to seeing you in the next episode of the Wise Decision Maker Show. In the meantime, the wisest and most profitable decisions to you, my friends.